So I'm Anna Kruger, and Katie's here. Katie, say hello.
Hi, I'm Katie Collins.
Hi, Katie. And we're going to jump in today and talk about how to have a seller appointment. Number one, actually show up. And then number two, how do you get the listing agreement once they show up? Now, whether you're an inside sales agent or a listing or buyer agent, what you'll hear today will apply to you. Because I know as an inside sales agent, I had an interest in whether or not my listing agent got the signature, right? Because that helps both of us. So we'll talk through a lot of techniques today and hear from Katie. So Katie, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you are currently doing.
So I'm a licensed real estate agent out of Austin, Texas. I joined real estate in 2013, and I directly joined a team, the Heil Group team with Tim Heil. I came on as the listing specialist in that team and worked with a team of ISAs and a team of buyer agents to get the job done and work on as many listings as I could. So in my first year, I was able to successfully close 144 listings. And a lot of that has to do with the techniques that I'm going to talk about today.
Yeah, so that in case you missed that, so Katie sold 144 homes, not took 144 homes, which would be amazing in and of itself, right? Or went on 144 appointments. She actually sold and closed 144 appointments her first year in real estate. So clearly she did something that worked. Up until this point of time, I don't know of anybody else that I know that has sold 144 homes in their first year. So definitely impressive. So Katie, tell us, where did all of these appointments come from? You referenced ISAs. How did you have the bandwidth to go on 144 appointments, and where did they come from?
Okay, so the majority of our appointments at this time came from expired withdrawals for sale by owners. With a little bit of circle prospecting mixed in there. And then we, to be completely transparent, we dropped the ball in our database. So we were not getting nearly as many referrals as we should have at the time. So very few, which those were my favorite appointments, of course. But so we were primarily the bread and butter of my business was for sale by owner expired withdrawals.
Perfect.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool because a lot of people have limiting beliefs about those sources. So what was your mindset? Help the person out that's listening. In fact, I had a coaching call like this earlier today where they just said I have a mindset around those FSBOs and expireds where I'm nervous to call them. I haven't seen success, and so I'd rather call anybody else but those guys. And then here you are, you sold a massive amount of them. So what was your mindset?
Okay, so here's a couple different ways I look at it. One, I'm never going to meet these people again if something bad should happen. So if you want to yell at me on the phone or I want to put my foot in my mouth, okay, so what? I'm not going to know you from Adam. And let's say I was calling somebody that's in my sphere. They probably weren't even putting that together if I was just calling them on an expired call. So it's no harm, no foul. More importantly, though, what really motivated me to go after this type of business is they've raised their hand. They've said, hey, I want to sell my house. One person saying, hey, I want to sell my house, and the last agent couldn't get it done. And the other one is saying, hey, I want to sell my house, but I think I can sell it myself. So an aspect of this relationship that I'm going to engage in as I call them and prospect them is I am going to be highly aware of the reflex no. Of the prospect trying to brush me off and tell me no. And the way I look at that is it's not personal. They're not actually telling me no. They are programmed just to say no to anybody. So I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to keep going. And what really helped me kind of understand this was when I recognized that I do it too.
Yeah.
All the times I go through a department store and someone says, hey, can I help you with the dressing room? Can I help you find something today? And I go, no, I'm good. But then 10 minutes later, I'm like, can you find this in my size?
Yeah.
Or all the time someone says, hey, would you like something to drink? No, I'm okay. Thank you. Are you sure? I just made a batch of margaritas. Really?
All right, then.
Okay, yeah, I'll try some. Right. And the next thing you know, I have 2 margaritas later, I'm walking home instead of driving.
Yeah.
So my point to that is, especially with for sale by owners, it's like they gave themselves a mental pep talk that day saying, say no, say no, say no. And that's fine. As soon as you recognize that that's going to happen and you're allowing it to roll off your back and keep going, you from then on have already pulled away from the pack and becoming more successful at converting that to an appointment.
Yeah.
So those are some of the mindsets that I had around lead generation.
Yeah. And one reason we're starting with mindset is just to share a totally non-real estate example about mindset. Is just yesterday I was at the gym with my trainer and we were doing a bench press. And I promise I'll bring this back. Just stay with me. So we were doing a bench press and it was the highest weight I'd ever lifted during a bench press. And the first set I was fine. The second set, I dropped the left side. It was literally like my arm could not lift the left side. So he grabbed the bar, put it up, and he's like, get yourself together, get your mind right. It's in your head. And let's do it again. So he put the bar back in, and this time he had his hands right underneath so that as I came down, he came down, and as I went up, he went up. Well, you know what? I actually did that set better than the first one. It should have been harder. And then I said, when I was all done, I was upset. I'm like, did you take some weight off? Because I wanted him to challenge me. And I'm like, why did he take weight off the bar here? And he actually said, no, it's the exact same weight that you just did. It's in your head. And his point was, you thought when you were doing this by yourself, you couldn't lift the left side. And as soon as I put my hands here, the only thing that was different was your mindset. And your mindset changed. You felt safer, you felt more secure, and so you did it with no problem. And that was such a huge thing to me to realize, okay, if this is showing up in something as simple as lifting a barbell, where in the world else is mindset showing up that we can do way more than we think we can do, but it's in our head. We have a head talk about it. So I love that you shared that, Katie. And it's true. What do you have to lose? You can pass these people by in a grocery store 10 minutes later. They're not going to know it was you that called them. So really, really big.
Yeah. And then another element too that really helped me continue to go with it is I took a listing. Once I met with the guy, I recognized that by him selling his house, he was going to be able to move closer to his ex-wife and children and walk them to school every day. And he literally started crying at our appointment and thanked me for cold calling him.
Oh, that's awesome. Well,
so I just remind myself that my mission here is to be in service to others and help them with typically their largest asset and the biggest determinant of their lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, Katie, is you had to have asked him some good questions to get him to the point that he was crying. So why don't you talk through, what do you say or ask when you are calling a seller to even, because a lot of people focus on the logistical stuff, right? Like, how big's your house and when do you want to move? What do you ask that's clearly different?
Oh, the biggest thing that I want to uncover that I focus on with every call that I make to a seller is motivation. I cannot echo that enough. Motivation, motivation, motivation. Here's where I think people kind of get confused is they start talking to the seller and the seller automatically tells them their plan. Katie, we're wanting to move to Greenville, South Carolina. We hear there are beautiful blue-eyed people there and we just can't wait to get there. But in all reality, we are looking to make that move in the next couple months. Okay, great. Now, if I ask probably an average agent, what's their motivation for moving, they'll say they want to get to Greenville, South Carolina. And that's where they're going to move.
Yeah.
They'll say, well, but it's going to happen, Katie. They want to do it in the next 3 months. I say, okay, well, that's their proposed timeline. But we haven't yet uncovered why they're actually moving there. If it's something floaty along the lines of, beautiful blue-eyed people, right? We're going to dig in deeper than that. We're going to dig in to find out what specifically is causing them to make that move. And more importantly, how is that impacting their life? Yeah. So you want them to connect those dots for you over the phone. And the only way you're going to be able to effectively do it at a high level is by being question-based. Yeah. Because more often than not, people are not going to tell you their whole life story over the phone. And even if they do, quite often they don't recognize the significance or really drill down to what it is that's causing them to make this move and how important it is to them. They need help with that self-reflection of identifying, okay, well, we're actually moving to Greenville, South Carolina because I start my new job and I want to be there by this time. And I know that I need to get this house sold because it's going to weigh on me heavily if I don't, because I'm going to have 2 mortgages. We've already bought another place. It's going to stretch me thin, and then I won't be able to focus. It's already going to be so stressful with the wife and the kids upbringing. I mean, you want to get that in depth with them. And the best way to do it is to be question-based, to where they're doing 80% of the talking, you're doing 20%, and of your 20% of talking, it's 90% questions.
Yeah.
Does that help?
A really great point. And Katie, if I can, I want to map something out for everybody real quick.
Yes.
So, Katie, give me just a random word. So let me back up. I'm going to demonstrate digging. And I'm going to show you how you can take notes on a piece of paper when you're talking with a client to make sure you're actually digging into their motivation. So let me make a differentiation here real quick to highlight what Katie's saying. And this is why she's a coach. She's really good at this. So you can ask motivation-based questions, or you can ask logical questions. And what I hear listening to a lot of recorded calls, and Katie, probably the same thing for you, is people out there are asking good questions, yet they tend to be logically based. And we learn in the BOLD class through Keller Williams that logic makes people think, but it's the emotion that actually makes people act. So for example, if I'm talking to somebody and they say, well, I want to move to be closer to work, I might be able to say, okay, where is closer to work? That's an open-ended question. However, that's a logic question, right? I said where. That's more of a logical, where do they want to be question. That's like a pre-qualification question, right? But if I said, well, why do you want to be closer to work? That's a better open-ended question. That's more geared to the why or the emotion. So if you're listening, the skill to work on is open-ended questions. But even more than that, it's making sure your open-ended questions are geared towards the why, not the where, when, how much, how big, none of that. You'll get to that eventually, but the first thing is the why do you even want to do it? So Katie, let's just demonstrate for a minute, and then I'll go back to questions. So as Katie talks, I'm going to pretend I'm the listing agent, and I'm going to actually map out the conversation, and then I'll hold it back up so you guys can see. So Katie, moving's a ton of hard work. What makes you want to move?
I want to be in a different part of town for my school district.
Okay, so you want to be different part of town, school district. So what is it that's important to you about being in a different part of town with the school district?
Well, currently, the schools that we're filtering into aren't rated that high. And
okay.
I know that where I'm looking has a much better school district with like great teachers. And I mean, I've gone and taken a tour, and it just seems to be where we need to be.
Okay, got it. So I'm writing down her words so I can turn it into the next question. So she said, they're not rated that high. We want to be in a better school district. So Katie, what would being in a better school district do for you and your family specifically?
Well, my husband and I have 2 babies right now, and they're going to be going into elementary school. And we feel strongly that this is part of their formative years. And what we're looking for is to kind of get them in a place where we can feel like, they're around peers that are going to help them make good choices and stay on the track to being good students.
Okay. Good. And I could keep going. Then you could say, okay, and then I know this might be an obvious question, but what's important to you about them being on a good track and being good students? Because what's probably underneath all this is something about college opportunity or something. Like there's more to this story.
Or something I've heard recently personally is the opioid epidemic across the country, and getting out of that environment.
Yeah.
And getting to a different part of town, a different city altogether to get rid of that element.
So actually that's a great example, because we assume so much. And I stopped the role play because in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, this is going to go towards college opportunity, right? Because that's what I'm used to hearing. And Katie is saying something totally different. She's hearing, it's avoiding drugs, right? And getting to a better area. So this is why we ask questions. And this is how you can map it out. If you can you guys see that pretty well? Cool. What it wasn't is which school district and when do you want to be there, right? So that's the difference of motivation versus logic. So thanks for helping to hash that out. Katie. That's so
Absolutely.
cute.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Go
okay,
ahead.
sorry.
Nope, you go. I was just going to ask you another question.
I was going to say, when you're digging for this motivation, always be writing notes, repeat and affirm back to them, and go ahead and affirm massively where you're connecting those dots, because these are speech patterns that help establish trust with you in that prospect.
Okay. So give us an example of affirming massively, just if somebody's not heard that term before and wondering what that might sound like.
So you were essentially doing it, and it's where you're repeating to them saying, okay, so it's important that you're in a new school district, I say yes, I really want them to be around a good peer group. And then you say, right, and I've already alluded to formative years, go right, because the people they surround themselves now are going to have an impact on them later in life. And you just want to make sure, right, Katie, that they're going to be in good company to set themselves up for success. So that's where you kind of circle back and you just hit the nail on it again, saying, yes, this is the point that you're making, prospect, correct? So that now I'm feeling Anna totally understands me. She gets me. She knows what my goals are, and she's going to be in better position to help me now that she understands why that's important to me.
Yeah. And this is where I hear of people that send out a form, meaning they find somebody that wants to buy or sell. And then they say, okay, great, I'm going to email you something to fill out to get ready for our appointment. But do you guys see how actually asking the questions on the phone, while it might make it a longer conversation than if you just emailed them a form to fill out, it gives you so much opportunity to build rapport and make that personal connection. And then why would they go somewhere else? So that's where the rapport building, knowing their story, that all ties into getting them to actually show up, which is what this whole thing's all about. So I think you just answered this, but I want to make sure we hashed out all pieces. What are the essential things that you believe to make an appointment actually keep their commitment?
Okay, so one is motivation, of course, key. Second is I like to think of it as the do's and don'ts of a call. Some of the don'ts that I withhold from an initial phone call is I never ever talk price of a home.
Okay.
Because if you start talking price and you're already getting commitment from them and we set something on the calendar, if you're talking to a high I that doesn't want to hurt your feelings or ruffle your feathers, then the minute you talk about price, if they're not in alignment with you, they might try to ghost you, no show, or cancel because they're thinking this person doesn't want my price. I never ever talk price on a call, not just because I feel like it puts you in a position to be stood up or to be rejected. But quite honestly, I don't ever feel comfortable talking about price until I've seen the property. Yeah. I need to go in, see it, smell it, get the walkthrough, get the client to tell me about the features so that I can best assess the market value. And I honestly, that is the truth for me. So it becomes incredibly easy for me to handle that objection when people are just spitting out, what price? It's, I want to get you the highest and best price, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. In order for me to do that, to give you the absolute best analysis, I need to get into the property. I want you there to walk me through it so that I don't miss anything unique about your home. Because it's quite common for sellers to point out that they have something unique about their home. So you're playing into that hand as well. So that's one of my don'ts on the call. Another don't that I practice is I don't discuss my commission over the phone.
So how, can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah.
How do you handle it if somebody is asking you on the line, what's your price? What price do you think my house is worth? And they're pretty insistent on it. Like, well, yeah, but can you just give me a ballpark? Or same thing with commission. Why can't you just tell me over the phone? Can't you make at least a good guesstimate? Because I can see that objection coming up. So how do you?
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
Yeah.
It's almost like a broken record at times. So what I typically say when they ask me, can you give me a guesstimate? Well, what do you think? What's just your gut? I'll say, honestly, I don't know. I don't know because I have to do the research that you and your house deserve. Yeah. Fair enough. And I do a tie down, like fair enough. Nobody ever says that's not fair. Yeah. It has been my experience. So I'll often do that and then go in further and explain how my goal is to get the highest price. So I kind of like halt that attitude right there with that kind of cutoff and then go into here's why I don't know. And they seem to be way more accepting of that if I'm able to cut it off early, as opposed to, well, I haven't run the numbers and I need to take a look at it. And don't get pressured into that.
Yeah.
You are the professional. It's like asking a doctor, what do you think's wrong with me, without letting him take an x-ray, an examination, or anything. It's like, I don't know. WebMD says you have cancer, but let's get real. It's probably not it.
Yeah.
So
that's a great analogy that you could use too. And a line that I've heard that I think is brilliant is, if somebody's still giving pushback after that, you could also say, well, we do things differently. That's part of how we get different results. So
that's a great one too.
You want average, or do you want the best? And so that's another great way that you can handle it.
Yeah. And then for commission, I deflect. I say, that's an absolutely great question. I'm more than happy to discuss with you my commission schedule at the appointment. And that's when I address it then, but only after I've delivered the listing presentation. Perfect. Because again, it doesn't quite make sense to say, hey, I charge 6%, but yet you don't know everything that I'm going to do to earn that.
Right. Well, and really, one thing Haro taught me was, when they say that, just say, well, what's your question behind the question?
Mm-hmm.
And usually they start talking about, well, I just want to make sure I get the most amount of money in my pocket. And here's the thing, guys, is they don't really care about what your commission is. What the question is behind the question is, how much can I earn by working with you? Mm-hmm. So it's not, if you start talking about the commission, especially on the phone, that's not actually even really what they care about. So just to highlight that.
And what's really interesting that I've noticed is I've had a lot of people ask me about my commission up front, but then once I get through the presentation, they're not as worried about it anymore, because they're understanding where the money's, like, what's being done and what the price is and how much they expect to net. Yeah. It's a non-issue. So sometimes I think we get objections confused with just questions.
Yeah. I think it's a great point. We get objections or confused with questions. Sarah said something today on our webinar. Katie, maybe you can help me out if you remember what it was. She said something about objections. It's either a lack of motivation or a lack of education, I think is what she said. So usually when people are bringing something up to you, it's either rooted in they're not motivated, or they don't have proper education about whatever the thing is. Because I think we can all agree, and I hope you agree with this if you work in real estate, it makes sense to work with an agent and it makes sense to work with you, right? So if they don't believe that, they're not educated enough about what you do and how you do it and why you do it.
Right. So for me, that line of lack of education is synonymous with an absence of value. They're missing a piece of value that you haven't quite explained to them yet, that you haven't quite helped them connect the dots with. So it's all about I can't even begin to tell you, it's all about getting back to that motivation to be able to explain to them how you're going to be able to help them with that goal, but to an even more specific point, by asking them questions around what they're looking for in a real estate agent. What is their intended experience with this transaction? And making sure that you're addressing those pieces as well.
That's a great point. And to speak to the ISA side for a minute, so Katie is a listing agent, which really is ISA and listing agent, right? Because we all should be lead generating. From my perspective as an inside sales agent, never actually doing a listing appointment myself, but setting them up for someone else, actually the more questions that they ask me in the setting process actually helps me set the appointment, because every question that comes my way, great, let me write that down and Katie will cover that for you when you meet with her. That's exactly why you need to meet with Katie. She's the best person that can answer that question for you. So it's when you're setting it as the ISA, look at their questions as your leverage, actually, because great, let me write that down. Oh, that's one more thing Katie can talk to you about. Is there anything else you want to make sure Katie covers with you when you meet with her? And just make a big list. And then if you want the answers to that, meet with Katie, right? And that's how you word setting that up.
And I would caution ISAs out there who are maybe sending CMAs before appointments.
Yes, absolutely.
What's happening there is, no matter how many times you say on the phone, well, this is just a broad overview. This isn't your house. This is just what they are like, and then it just goes out the ear.
Yep.
And they say, oh, my house is worth $500,000 because that's the most expensive one on this list. And that's what Anna told me. So when Katie gets here, if she tells me anything less than that, I'm going to jump all over her and da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yep.
part of the relationship with the ISA and the listing agent is teeing up that appointment, but you want that listing agent to have success so that the deal gets through and everybody gets paid and everybody's happy. So what's happening when you're sending out that CMA is sometimes you are actually throwing the listing agent off their trajectory for their price conversation.
Yeah.
And could potentially be setting false expectations with the client.
Yeah.
When that's a great opportunity for you to say, oh, back to what Anna said, you know, that's a great question you have about the market. That is what Katie specializes in. Right. So when is a good time, beginning part of the week, latter end of the week, for her to get out there and meet with you about it?
Yep. It's your leverage point. Well, and the other thing is, I actually had a call with somebody today who said we were working to figure out as an ISA why the efficiency was so low, because she works very hard. I know this person, they have a great work ethic, yet the contacts were low considering the entire day is making calls. Mm-hmm. So we dug into, well, what are you doing all day that's making your contacts drop? Because it wasn't very many in a day. And what we uncovered is she was doing all these CMAs for all these different listings. And the thing is, number one is, are they committed? You know, are you doing all this work for somebody that may just be very casually curious, number one. Number two, your job as an ISA is to get them in the door, right? Your job is to generate business for that listing agent to handle. You don't have to solve and know everything. In fact, the more information that you give them, why would they come in and meet with somebody or come out? I keep saying come in because we have them come into our office. Katie, I know, goes out. So it's, the more that you tell them, the less reason they have to meet with you. If I called my doctor and described all my symptoms over the phone, and he's like, oh, from what you said, I'm confident that you have the flu. Let me call in a prescription for you. I'm not going to his office. Why would I? That's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. I just got everything I wanted for free over the phone. And by the way, he might be wrong because he didn't actually see me. I was just telling him what I felt like my symptoms were. So anyway, that is a huge piece with ISA. Don't answer all the questions. Let the listing agent handle all that.
Right.
Perfect.
So I saw here in the chat box some questions that I'd like to address real quick. Sure. Vulcan 7 is actually who we utilize for all of our data, but we also utilize Mojo for the dialing capabilities. That's just kind of talking about efficiency in terms of using an auto dialer, keeping our morale up, letting us get as many contacts as possible, which I think is incredibly beneficial in hitting big goals for appointment conversions, appointment sets. I mean, nothing is more frustrating than hand dialing, wondering if you misdialed, hearing it ring, and feeling like nobody's answering, as opposed to an auto dialer when you only hear when people answer. So can't say enough good things about that. How many touches are you making with the expireds on average before you get the appointment? Is the conversion on the expired appointments higher or lower based on the amount of touches? So we would probably average around, I'd say, 10, it depends. So we would call old expireds and new expireds. For new expireds, we had a pretty good conversion rate of setting an appointment as soon as it expired. It would go out maybe as many as 5 touches across the week, 2-week period. The times that we weren't successful with converting those new appointments is there's some outlying data that you need to look at when you have people that accidentally expire, that are still actually contractually obligated with their agent and they just had a mistype, or they already re-upped with their agent and it's a strategic move to expire and go back with that person for personal reasons or what have you, because we have reset things in Austin. So we would definitely notice an increase in conversion if we consistently did our follow-up, but it was definitely on the shorter end of the touches than anything dragging out longer.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I hear a lot of people say, I hear across the spectrum, I hear some people say I call them hard when they're new. I hear other people say, well, I wait because they get a lot of calls when they're new and I don't want to be that guy. But actually, that's just shooting yourself in the foot because most of them will relist very quickly.
Yes.
If whoever actually contacts them. So having a good contact strategy. And to add to that, calling expireds were one of my favorite. If you're out there and you're thinking, I would love to call expireds and they make me nervous, I think a big part of that is doing it enough that you build the skill. because I know when I first started calling expireds and FSBO, I did not like it because I wasn't seeing results. I wanted success, was not seeing success. Yet the thing is, guys, as you do it over time, you get better and better. And those two sources actually became my personal favorite. What I found is I may not always hear from a lead right away that expired, but through calling them consistently and leaving them voicemails and having some email touches, 3 months later, you get the call and they're like, hey, I'm ready now. I don't know if you remember me, but 3 months ago when my house expired, you were the only agent that called me consistently. So I'm not even going to interview anybody else. At this point, you're the person I want to talk to. Well, I didn't even know that they were getting my messages. I never heard anything. So staying consistent with the right activities. Haro always says the right activities always lead to the right results. So you do your part, call them when they're new, make sure you have a good strategy, and chances are good you will either get the lead yourself or you'll hear back when they are finally ready.
Awesome.
Good. Hi, Nicole, by the way. I just saw that you were one of the ones that typed in. Yay. Okay. So Katie, one of the questions we had is how do you decide how much to share over the phone versus saving it for the appointment? So we already know that you wait to talk about price, you wait to talk about commission. Is there anything else that you save for the appointment versus telling them enough on the phone to get the appointment? So talk to us about that.
So I do not tell them what I do to sell their house over the phone.
Meaning strategies.
Yes, and I do not brag about our team or numbers. And so the reason I say it that way is it can be challenging for people to demonstrate over the phone why this team sets themselves apart from other teams without sounding a little bit ego crazy.
Yes.
So what we do, our focus, what we were trained on is to make this all about the client.
Yeah.
Figure out what it is that their goals are, why it's important, and then say things like, I'm confident we can help you achieve this, right? Katie's fantastic at listing homes that didn't sell the first time. So it's less about, well, oh yeah, that sounds great. Well, just so you know, Katie sold 100 houses and yours could be a 101 if you meet with her on Saturday. If you focus too much on those types of numbers to push, then sometimes all you're doing is pushing instead of actually listening. Yeah. So do I think it's appropriate for you to tell them some track record history? Yes. Do I think it's appropriate for you to try to make them feel better about the appointment knowing that they're meeting with professionals? 100%. What I'm saying is caution yourself. Recognize if what the majority of the conversation was you telling them all about the team versus uncovering what their story is. Then you might want to reassess that balance better. So save, the accolade talks for part of the pre-listing package or the listing presentation itself, and then save what you're actually going to do, what your strategy is to sell the house for the actual appointment. You don't want them to feel as if they heard the entire strategy right now over the phone, because then they're never going to meet with you. It's just like what you're saying about the doctor.
Yeah. So you just said something interesting about a pre-listing appointment. So part of getting an appointment to actually show up can be what occurs from, okay, Katie, I'll see you on Thursday at 4:00 and we hang up. So what happens between now and Thursday at 4:00? So talk to us about that process and how it helps appointments stick.
So the first thing that we do is we email a calendar invite. And this is a great stickiness factor is what I call this. Because what happens is when we send out the calendar invite, they will click accept or maybe or nothing at all. And that for us is a huge indicator of this person's commitment to the time slot of meeting. So I can't tell you how great it feels to send out a calendar invite and see them accept and be like, yeah, I'm meeting with you on Friday, and just kind of, that's a victory in and of itself for me personally. Now, the other thing that we do is because we've captured their email, we're also sending them an email with our pre-listing packet, just information about us. And what I like to include is testimonials from my past clients. I have videos of past clients at closing tables saying things like, the Heil Group helped us when it felt like nobody else could. We had expired off the market 3 separate times. And after listing with them, they were able to walk us through the process and get our home sold. So it's real short soundbite kind of reviews. and we can tell when they're opening those to see the engagement there. So being able to monitor that on the back end helps me again know, okay, yes, this is a sticky appointment. This feels good. What I always ask them is, if I send over this information, will you take a look at it? I always ask them, will you take a look? And some of them will be like, honestly, I'm just so busy, I probably won't take a look at it. And I'll say, oh, wow, okay. Are you busy with other appointments with agents? Is that what it is? It's a great segue for me to kind of dig around that a little bit more. And if they keep going on about their busy schedule and all this stuff, it's a perfect opportunity for me to explain how by them looking at this, it's going to save us time. So if you can carve out any time between now and then, it's going to save you time on the appointment.
Yeah.
Because my goal is actually to get my clients in a place where they have a lot of questions for me when I get to the listing. So what I found interesting is a lot of agents are kind of afraid to have questions come up. And what I find is it's great. If I have a seller sitting here who asks me 85 questions and I can sit here and answer them or walk them through it or say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll get it to you by tomorrow, they feel better at the end of the appointment. They feel better. It's a lot harder to close somebody that you just kind of speed through and say, and they don't know up from down and think, oh, okay, yeah, I got a lot to process. I don't think I'm going to be ready to sign today. Yeah. So I want them prepared for the appointment by taking a look at our pre-listing packet. So it prompts them to start thinking about it more so that they're prepared with questions when I get there.
Yeah. Well, and I also think questions are a sign that they're interested, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of going back to the department store analogy. When the lady says, hey, can I help you? And you say no, you're not engaging. But when you say, hey, can you order this in my size? The fact that you're asking a question shows that you're actually fighting or buying into whatever they're saying. Diana talks about when people are asking questions, they're actually fighting or working to get onto your same side of the page. So it's actually a really great sign when people have a lot of questions for you. So what I'm hearing is you set the appointment, you set the expectation. I'm going to send you a calendar invite, make sure you accept it. I'm also going to send you a video to look at, make sure, will you watch that and make a list of questions before we meet? Is there anything else that you do between?
Confirmation call. I also let them know that I'm going to be calling to confirm the appointment 24 hours before the actual appointment is set to be had. For the situations where the ISA sets the appointment, I get engaged with the seller much sooner than that.
Okay.
I want them to associate me as an actual human being in person, because what I find has been the case in the past is Anna, great report, sets the appointment. 3 days go by. Why did I set that? I'm so busy. I can't do it. I'm just not going to answer whenever that person calls. I can't remember her name. She's supposed to help me.
Yeah,
I'm just going to no-show them. Yeah. They wouldn't no-show Anna because they like Anna. They've told Anna their goals, and they feel like Anna's going to help them by sending me. So as soon as I get that lead over to me as a listing agent with the ISA role, I want to engage with that seller and reconfirm the time slot, reconfirm their motivation, get them to tell me the same story they told Anna. I want to connect with that person at that same level. What helps me do this is when my ISA has put notes in the system.
Yeah.
First of all, we kind of jump there. You need a system. If you're working with ISAs and listing agents, you need a system. Calendaring, I mentioned that earlier. How are you setting appointments for your agents if you don't know when they're available? If you're having to put that client on hold to run down the office and ask 4 people who can take it, you're missing the opportunity there to close somebody more effectively if you're running into those type of roadblocks by not having systems and processes in place.
Yeah. And actually, to speak to that about the ISA side, there's a group, in fact, several of you may even be in this webinar because of the group. There's a group called ISA Mastermind Group. You guys are welcome to join it. And it's funny, I get a lot of private messages from ISAs, and I think it's because I'm the unknown person behind the scene that I can talk to that doesn't know me or my team, and it's kind of anonymous. So I get a lot of messages from that group privately. And the number one thing that I hear is I'm thinking about leaving my team because I don't feel like my agents value the appointments I'm setting for them, because they don't follow up when, I told the lead that they would hear from Katie, by within the next 24 hours, and then they never called. Or, maybe the appointment's happening, but I'm not hearing feedback. So just in the effort to help you guys that have ISA teams keep talented ISAs, I'm sharing that with you because I'll just tell you one thing. If I was on a team, as an ISA, I consider myself driven and motivated. My income is tied to that agent following through. Just like their income is tied to me effectively pre-qualifying and not just putting junk on their calendar, right? So it's a two-way street. Well, imagine being a highly driven, motivated person, setting appointments for somebody, and then you just never hear what happened. How long would you stay in that environment, right? Especially if you're a results-oriented person, which, by the way, talented ISAs are results-oriented people. So it's really important. I'm getting on my soapbox. It's really, really, really important, guys. I would love to get less messages from anonymous people from that Facebook group saying I'm thinking about leaving my team because my agent isn't following up and they're not giving me feedback on the appointment. You've got to have a good system. The easiest system is what Katie just mentioned, is just put notes. You know, if I can pull up our CRM and the agents put a note in there, met with client, signed agreement, that's all I need to know. I don't need to know anything else. So definitely having a system for communication is key.
And I think you're creating goals and metrics around conversion for both the ISA and the agent is huge. So something that happened for me early on, just to show my naivete, I guess you could say, when I first started taking listings, I was driving all over Austin. I was burning from both ends of the candle. And I remember what was happening. We went to look at the numbers at the end of the month, and we had all these canceled appointments. And Tim said, how the heck is this happening? And I'd say, well, I call them and they just cancel. And he's like, no, Katie, you're letting them cancel. I'm like, letting them cancel? They just cancel. What do you mean? I can't do anything about that. He's like, okay, I didn't teach you the reschedule script. Let's talk about this. So he made it so that the cancel word was an evil word in the company. And I took up part of the responsibility of ensuring the appointment sticks. So this is a very common thing I feel with listing agent to ISA. Well, it canceled because that was a bunk appointment, or it canceled because she didn't follow up. So why don't we both take ownership of appointments sticking on the calendar? Why don't we both come up with a clear, hey, this is a good appointment. These are the exact things I'm looking for that mean this is a good appointment. And hey, this is what a follow-up system looks like. This is the type of scripting we have around making sure somebody stays on the calendar. So for me, it's alternative choice close. Someone's calling me to cancel. I'm really busy. Oh, okay, I totally understand. Why don't we go ahead and put something tentative on the books for next week? Which days typically, and I won't hold you to this exactly, but which days typically work best for you? I'm trying to get them to iron out their schedule in their mind without actually having to have their calendar in front of them, because that's a common excuse that we get. So just think on a broad scale, right? Which works best, weekdays or weekends? Okay, well, I don't have my calendar, but I mean, typically I'm jam-packed on the weekends with family stuff. Weekdays are probably going to be better. Okay, great. Beginning part or the latter end of the week? Okay, I still don't have my calendar in front of me, but I mean, honestly, I try not to book anything on Mondays because it's always crazy bad. Probably my slower days would be middle of the week, Wednesday, Thursday. Okay, great. Mornings or afternoons. See how you're backing them into those time slots?
It's like you're doing this with their schedule.
Yes.
Broad and getting them down into one little thing.
Yeah, and you start off with, let's just make this tentative. So I'll call you again to confirm to make sure this is a good time slot, and we can move it if necessary. But by golly, I'm not getting off the phone with you until we have another appointment set, because the likelihood that I'm going to get you on the phone again or try to convince you that you're not busy is going to be more challenging. Yeah. And I've been there where I've had to cancel on somebody. I've just been overwhelmed in that moment, especially in that moment because you're realizing you're double booked. So it's more so of an emotional, like, I'm overwhelmed. By having somebody coach me down that path, I'm going to be able to make a better decision on my calendar, and it's going to rebook. Yeah, so really it's kind of, you want to make sure that both your agents and your ISAs understand that it's a team effort in getting these appointments to stick and recognizing whose responsibility is for what.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you said it's a team effort. So as an ISA, we're not even on the same team, right? And I actually felt my energy level going up when you were talking about creating a plan together of ownership. And so if we're not even on the same team and we're just talking shop and ideas, I have to imagine that if we were on the same team and as an ISA and agent coming together, like, hey, let's hash out a good follow-up plan to make sure they stick. How energizing and life-giving is that going to be to the people in the roles? So that's a really great point. Also, talking about the stick rate, it's always tying the motivation. So Katie and I were talking about at the beginning, making sure that you hash out the motivation, that it's actually a pointless activity unless you know how to use the motivation later, right? Well, I shouldn't say it's pointless, because if you never bring it up again, it does still have value. Yet part of why we do that and take the time to ask them motivation is so that when they want to cancel, you can say something like, well, I know, Katie told me it was really important to you to get your kids in a better school district, so you're out of the current zone that you're in. So I want to work to make this reschedule for you. Let's get you back onto the calendar. So it's almost like you're like, hey, here's your motivation. Hey, here's your motivation. And you're just constantly putting it in their face. Gary Keller tells us in Shift, I think it's like page 108 or something. I just read this. And he talks about motivation is a lot like, what is it like? He says we have to constantly re-energize people. And what that put in my mind, going back to the notes I took earlier with Katie, they say, Katie, remember, this is what you want to do. Hey, Katie, this is why we're getting together. Hey, Katie, sign here so I can help you get this done. And you're constantly putting it back up in their face, so to speak, but in a good way to remind them what they're doing.
Yeah.
Anything else to say to that, Katie?
Another thing I'll say is part of that ISA listing agent dynamic, which really helped our team, was we made the rule that if you as an agent go out on an appointment that an ISA set, you do not have the right to be upset with the ISA if you feel like that appointment wasn't ready, because you have that person's phone number. And that should be part of your confirmation call, your introductory call, is to revisit those motivation points, all the notes that the ISA put in the system. So what I find really interesting is when I'm coaching ISAs or agents on teams, they'll ask me, okay, well, Katie, would you go on an appointment if it was like this? Or would you go on an appointment if it was like this? And would you go on an appointment if it was like this? Or would you set an appointment if this is what they said? Or would you set an appointment if this is what they said? And it really has to do with what are your goals and what are the team's goals. Because if I'm hungry and I have time, especially back in my day when I was running and gunning, I would take anything and everything, and I would look at it as a fun challenge to see if I can get this cranky person to not only hire me, but crack a smile. Yeah. And so I would have some situations where my ISAs would say, Katie, here's the deal with this one. He doesn't sound, I couldn't get his full motivation out. He's super closed off. I set it for this day. If you don't want to go on it, I understand, but would you give him a call and kind of feel him out, right? If you're an ISA and you've had some blowback from your agents about the appointments you set, start utilizing this mindset. Start talking to the agent about what their expectations are, and even pitching them people with kind of a nice little ego stroke. Katie, I know you're really good with the cranky ones. This guy, super cranky, couldn't get his motivation out. It might not be great, but I wanted to share that with you up front. And I figured if anybody's got a chance at taking him, it's you. So see what you can do and let me know. I'm happy to help facilitate it any way I can. So that's alleviating some tension between you and your ISA counterpart, as opposed to, why are you setting these bunk appointments? All you said is trash. Now I'm not going to follow up. And also on the other hand, ISA is saying she never goes on anything I said. She's just lazy. So I think that that's a huge component to a successful ISA listing relationship, is understanding what each other's expectations are and also coming up with a plan for managing those 100%.
Well, and that's also the training opportunity. So I'm thinking too, if you've been on these webinars before, you saw me interview Annalisa, I think it was 2 webinars ago. She was the listing agent I used to set appointments for. And one thing I really appreciated about working with her, on my end, I would run a quick CMA just to see if the person was crazy. I didn't talk to the client about it.
Yes.
But I would run the number real quick just to see, okay, they said they want 260. Let me see their neighborhood average. Okay, if their neighborhood average is 100, okay, not going to happen. I'm going to call them and cancel. I'm not even going to talk to the agent about But if it's something I'm unsure about, I would set it and have that conversation with Annalisa of, hey, I ran some quick numbers. I don't know. What do you think? And getting her feedback actually helped me get better, because I started to understand, when does one get canceled? When does she go for it? And it actually helped me get better to understand her thought process. And the other piece here too is it's not good to have 100% take rate, okay? And here's why I say that. If you have 100% take-in ratio, it actually means you're not being risky enough.
So, I love that you say that, because my take rate was 87.
There you go. And she sold 144. That's awesome. So here's the philosophy real quick, and set personal opinions aside about these two individuals I'm about to talk about. Sometimes people give me strong opinions. But I'm going to talk about Kobe Bryant and Wilt Chamberlain in basketball real quick. So Kobe Bryant, if you want to talk about conversion skill, he actually had one of the best conversion skills in the NBA. If he took a shot, it usually went in. The highest points he ever scored in an NBA basketball game, and this is a crazy number, guys. He by himself scored 81 freaking points in an NBA basketball game. That is a massive amount of points, okay, in an NBA professional game. Wilt Chamberlain, his conversion, so to speak, was less. So he would take more shots, less of them would actually go into the basket. But his highest score in an NBA game was 100. So Wilt Chamberlain actually took more opportunity. He failed more, but because he took more opportunity and because he missed more, he actually netted a higher number in the long run. He beat Kobe Bryant, who is a more talented individual. He beat him by 19 points. And 19 points is a lot when you look at an NBA professional basketball game. That's a lot of points. So the point there is, it is okay for you to go on appointments and not take every single one. A healthy gone on to take-in ratio is between 80 and 90%. If you're getting over 90%, you have to ask yourself, am I being too strict on who I meet with? There's a quote I heard this week, and it said, don't let your fear of missing out, let your fear of missing out be greater than your fear of failure. So what that means is you're either going to fail or you're going to miss out. Which one do you want? I'd rather not miss out. I'd rather fail than to miss out and learn in the process. So anyway, I get really passionate about stuff. So I'll kick it back to you, Katie.
I love that. I hadn't thought of it in that way, but that's so true.
Yeah, go in those appointments. So I have a couple more questions for you, Katie, but let's real quick hit the questions in the chat box. So Val says, beside testimony, what else is in your listing packet, and do you only email it?
So it's a pre-listing packet. It's not including what we're going to do to sell the house, because I'm setting this up before the appointment. With our bandwidth and the volume we were doing, we emailed it. If you are not going on 2 appointments a day, then by all means go in person to hand deliver it or drop it off. It gives you some added benefits of scoping out the property beforehand to get a better idea of how you think it's going to do in terms of pricing. And it's also another great touch to meet that client ahead of time. In the packet, we have about Tim. So if you're an individual agent, it's your About Me section. Grew up here, graduated here, these are my designations. Then the next section we have, it's the real estate transaction from beginning to end. So you can literally just Google, like in Texas, real estate transaction Texas, and there's tons of visual flow charts for what happens. And again, I want to educate my client on that process more so it can start to spark some ideas and questions for the appointment, getting them a little bit more educated. We also have in there additional client testimonials. If you haven't sold any real estate yet, say this is your first webinar and getting out there to go take a listing, you don't have to put your real estate sales testimonials in there. What I would challenge you to do is treat it the way you would any other job interview. In any traditional job interview setting, you're going to have a list of references. Whoever those people are, reach out to them, ask them to write 3 sentences about you, and then put that in as a testimonial. Katie's hardworking. She hits every goal she sets for herself. Great person to have in your corner, whatever they might say. Yeah. Then in addition to that, we also have a feature on, if you're not happy with us, you can fire us. This was incredibly beneficial as we were targeting expired, withdrawn, for sale by owners. We noticed that a lot of them had had previous negative experience with agents, and they didn't want to feel trapped in any type of commitment. So this is a great thing to put out there to say, hey, you can fire us at any time. And I go through that with them in greater detail at the appointment. If it's a for sale by owner, I'll put in there, ask me about our for sale by owner program to net you the most amount of money, which, just to kind of give you an idea of what that is, it's if they bring the buyer themselves, then we step out of the deal. The reality is we bring the buyer through our marketing and whatnot. So it really has never become an issue for us. It's just kind of a way to open that door with them. And then the other thing that we include in there is a list of homes that we've sold the previous few years. We always take out the address and zip code. Well, not the address. We always take out the city and the zip code. I work in Austin, but we service Round Rock, Pflugerville, greater Austin areas. And what I found is that if you put in the specific addresses, if you're going on an appointment in Round Rock and they see you have 70 homes sold in Pflugerville and 40 sold in Round Rock, they might think that you don't really know the Round Rock market. And that's just not true at all. So we want them to focus on the volume that we do, the units, and let that speak to the experience that we have and the success rate that we have. So that is typically what is included in our pre-listing packet. And like I said, nothing in there is about what we're going to do to actually get the home sold. Yeah. If that kind of helps.
Yeah, that's really good. And it's the same exact thing at the Haro group. So I think that comes from Bold, actually. What's interesting is it's just follow the models and systems that work, because Katie and I are from two totally separate things. And the whole time she's talking, I'm like, yeah, sounds pretty familiar. It's almost exactly the same thing. So use what we know works. Mm-hmm. Okay, your question. Yes, ISA Mastermind group on Facebook. And when you request to join, it'll ask you 3 questions. If they're not answered, we don't accept. So just make sure you answer the 3 questions and get in there. Katie, just because we're almost done, there's 2 ways that you can contact Katie if you have more questions for her. And then we'll finish up here with the chat box. The first thing is you can go to isamapscoaching.com, isamapscoaching.com. That's actually where this webinar will be posted within the next 48 hours. We also have a bank of webinars in there. So if you go there, Katie and I both work with the MAPS ISA coaching program. If you go to isamapscoaching.com, at the top, you'll see some information about the program and a button that says Get Started. That actually will kick you to one of us. It goes to a coach. It's not like some mysterious Never Never Land. It goes to a coach with our program, so we can call and just find out what you're looking for. Yeah, if you scroll down below that, you'll see several videos. You'll see a previous one with Katie. You'll see one that I did with Annalisa. If you go back further, there's videos in there on how do you hire an ISA and what do you pay them. So there's a lot of resources at isamapscoaching.com. So check that out. And then Katie, what's your email address if anybody wants to reach you directly?
Yeah, so my email is Katie@Heil Real Estate. I'm going to type it into the chat box right now.
Okay.
So that you have it. And you can email me directly.
Perfect. So either isamapscoaching.com or you can contact her directly there. Okay. Another question from Patrick. Do you have success doing that type of alternative close if they cancel via text or email?
That's a great question. So primarily, I feel the most persuasive that I can be is over phone. If I have been having the conversation with the seller to set the appointment over phone, and then they randomly text me a breakup, it's probably not going to go well, right? I'm going to immediately, as soon as I get that text message, call them to discuss it over the phone and make sure that I'm understanding what their goals are and if we can get this rescheduled. I typically do not have nearly as much success in persuading anybody to do anything via text or email, simply because so much miscommunication happens in written form, I feel. And in addition to that, I think that you are missing opportunities to dig deeper if you just limit yourself to text or email. I say text because it's still written word. Now, do I think that you could be successful from time to time? Possibly. If the only way in which that person's ever communicated to you is from email or text, that might be the medium that they're choosing to converse in, then yeah, I would try it in that medium. But again, going back to what I said at the beginning, if you're doing everything via phone and then you get the breakup text, you want to pick up the phone and call them. Right when you get it, you're going to have the highest chance of actually getting them on the phone.
Yeah. Well, and they're available and they know that that they're in front of their phone because they just text you.
Exactly.
And they know that too. So it's really even harder for them not to pick up because they know that they're free.
Yeah.
And so that's a really great point. Katie, anything else to add before we wrap up or right at the time here?
Let's see. Anything else to add for stickiness? You have a great close for appointment set that I love. Is there anything that would keep you from honoring this commitment? I love that, especially if you feel like that person might be a little flaky. I think it's great. But otherwise, I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now.
Okay, cool. And to add to that too, I find a lot of people will say, hey, which time's best for you? And when you say, hey, here, I'll just do it with you, Katie, real quick, and we can end with this. So let's pretend I'm setting an appointment with you. So Katie, hang on 1 second. Let me put you on hold and check the calendar to see what I can make work. So doing that, by the way, builds the idea that I'm really busy, or that Annalisa or whoever I'm setting for is really busy. And they usually want a busy agent, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, Katie, so it looks like I can carve out time either 2 o'clock today or 4 o'clock tomorrow. Which one of those can you commit to?
Probably 4 o'clock tomorrow. Yeah, that one should work. I'll have to race home, but I could probably do that one.
Okay. So Katie, question for you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to block this time off for you. And what that means, if anybody else calls and wants to meet tomorrow at 4, I'm going to turn them away. So with that in mind, is there anything you can think of that would prevent you from keeping that commitment?
No, I mean, I was thinking earlier that it would kind of be hard for me to get there, but I know what I'm doing. I'll just move that. I'll get there. I'll be there in time. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. All right, awesome. And then I would go on to say, I'm going to send you a calendar invite, all the stuff that Katie already talked about. Again, same basic process. So now if she were to say, well, I got to check with my mother-in-law to see if she can pick up the son from school, then I'm going to say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pencil you in. So it's almost like the takeaway factor, right? I'm going to pencil you in, Katie. How quickly could you check with your mother-in-law and see if she can pick up little Johnny from daycare?
Well, I'm actually going to see her here in about 30 minutes. She's going to come over. She's meeting us for dinner. So she's coming over.
Okay, perfect. So why don't could you text me or call me as soon as you talk with her and just let me know if she can for sure pick up Johnny from daycare?
Yeah, no, I could do that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And as soon as I get the text or phone call from you, I'll put you in a magic marker and take the pencil out. Sound good?
Oh, thanks, Anna.
Awesome. Yeah. And they usually laugh. Yeah. And then, but what you're communicating is, I want to make sure you're committed to this. And then usually you can throw in hey, again, the whole point of this is to get you that better school district so your kids are in a better environment and out of the situation they're currently in. So that's really why we're meeting, and I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And then there you go. Woohoo! All right, awesome. Well, hope this was helpful for you guys. Again, if you would like to share this with anybody, it will be posted at isamapscoaching.com. And again, there's a lot of previous videos. We're going to be doing more and more of these. Katie, you had great response last time. Somebody I talked to yesterday was like, Katie's freaking awesome. So I will definitely be on that webinar. So we'll have Katie on again. And if you have any special requests of topics you'd like covered, you can just send us a message. Katie has her email there. My email is maps, M-A-P-S, Coach Anna, A-N-N-A. I'll type that in as well. mapscoachanna@gmail.com. So if you have an idea or if you need to talk with us about anything, you can contact us there. All right, bye guys. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.